Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you have graced us with your presence this evening. We do definitely hope to wow you with our extremely good storytelling skills. But I wanted to start, first of all, off letting you know, which I know you all know this already, but I'm going to share it, that we serve a really big God. He has come through for us in so many ways this whole season long, and I am so glad to be here in front of you, sharing this with you because it's just awesome. So thank you for coming and sharing with us. Just a few things I want to talk about before we get started. We do leave the doors open, so during the show, the lobby lights will be completely turned out because if they're not, you will not be able to see what's going on here very well. So if you need to use the loo during the show, just be careful because it will be very dark. If you have children who decide that it's too long and boring and they decide that they want to go run around somewhere, they can go out to the porch or you can take them to the loo. There's a nice little sitting place in the women's loo. So anyway, or you could go into a classroom. But since the lobby has to be dark, you can't walk around out in the lobby because all the sound will come in here and then we won't be able to hear what's going on. So anyway, that takes care of children. All right, we do have concessions. If you did not see them, they will be there during intermission. So that goes to support our program. And we also have what's called cast shout-outs. And a cast shout-out is a little bag of candy, treats, with a note attached to it that you write to give to the cast member that you would like to give praise to. So those are out there. They're right inside the door. You probably saw them. Little pictures of all the cast members on a bucket. It's very adorable. So you can support our cast that way in our program also. Also, flash photos should not be done during the show because of their distractive measure. So you are more than welcome to take whatever photos you would like to take, just make sure your flash is turned off. And all your little beepy noises that your phones make are rather distracting also. So please put them on vibrate or shut them off completely, and that would be wonderful for us too. We also have a GoFundMe called Support the E-Town Homeschool Drama Club. If you're interested in supporting us that way, we would greatly appreciate it. It does take a little bit to put these shows together, so your support is wonderful, and we are very grateful for that. Last but not least, our main character, Elizabeth, speaks with you many times directly in order to share what's going on in her heart and her mind, and to further the story along. Now, there are some times where she will be right here in front of you, sharing with you what is going on, but there will be other times when her voice comes from the sky. It's not God, it's just Elizabeth, and she's going to continue the story that way, so don't be shocked if something happens and you hear her, but you do not see her. It's still Elizabeth. You will recognize her voice, I am sure. So that is what's going on with our show. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy it immensely. And now we shall present to you Pride and Prejudice.
It is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the personality of such a man may be, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of his new neighbours that he is considered as the rightful property of all women and their unmarried daughters.
Oh, the very one! Oh, don't you want to know who's taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Oh, it is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England.
Is he single? What is his name?
name is Mr. Bingley.
Married or single? Lydia.
Single, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4 or 5,000 a year. Oh, what a fine thing for our girls.
How so? And how can it affect them?
Oh, Mr. Bennet, you must know me thinking of his marrying one of them.
Oh, is that his design in settling here?
Design? Oh, how foolish.
You know Mamma means he may fall in love with one of us. I don't see why it shouldn't be me he fancies. Or me. Not in that bonnet. Oh.
Girls! Shh. Mr. Bennet, you must do your duty as a gentleman of the town. Call on Netherfield's newest tenant. You must speak to Mr. Bingley as soon as possible.
Oh no, I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go.
Mr. Bennet!
Or you may send them by themselves, which will perhaps be better still, for you are as handsome as any of them. Mr. Bingley may like you the best of the party.
Mr. Bennet, consider your daughters. They will be nothing if you do not visit Mr. Bingley, and we will not be able to visit them if you do not.
You do yourself a discredit, my dear. Mr. Bingley will be very happy to see you. And I will send him a letter, assuring him of my hearty consent of his marrying whichever of our daughters he chooses. Though I must throw in a good word for my Lizzie. She has little more wit than the rest. There, will that do?
Oh, Mr. Bennet, you have no compassion for my poor nerves.
You mistake me, my dear. I have high respect for your nerves. They have been my friends these 20 years at least.
Oh, you do not know what I suffer. 5 daughters and no sons to inherit the estate. Oh, and how dreadful it is that your fortune is to be entailed away to that odious cousin of yours, Mr. Collins. Because of him, we must simply see the girls married well.
Patience, my dear. We will come to see many young men of 4,000 or 5,000 a year come into the neighborhood.
It will not matter 20 such men should come, since you will not visit them.
Depend upon it, my dear, that when there are 20, I'll visit them all.
Oh, Lizzie, I do wish you could convince Papa not to tease poor Mamma.
Dearest Jane, you are too good for the rest of us. 'Tis a harmless joke, and Mamma quite forgets that we shall meet the acclaimed Mr. Bingley at the Meryton Assembly, if not sooner.
Oh, don't keep coughing so, Kitty. For heaven's sake, you will tear my nerves to pieces.
I don't cough for my own amusement.
I believe it is in the timing, my dear. You must cough with more rhythm. What say you, Mary, on all this stuff and nonsense? The formalities of introduction and the stress of whom you may introduce and be introduced to. For I know you are a young lady of deep reflection.
Well,
Yes, quite. Well, while Mary is adjusting her ideas, let us return to Mr. Bingley.
oh, I am sick of Mr. Bingley.
I am sorry to hear that. Had I known as much this morning, I never would have called on him.
You have called on him?
We cannot escape the acquaintance now.
Pa?
Oh, I knew I should have a chance with him.
I do hope he enjoys dancing.
Oh, Lord, yes, I cannot abide by a man who does not love to dance.
Oh, I knew I should persuade you at last. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. And never said a word until now. Oh, what a good joke.
Yes. Well, Kitty, I believe you may cough now as much as you please.
Kitty and Lydia attack the client daily with questions about Mr. Bingley, but he has eluded them all. So we've been obliged to accept second-hand intelligence from our neighbours, Lady Lucas and Sir William.
fond of dancing.
There you see, Lydia. He's fond of dancing.
I dearly hope you'll be fair of a dance, my dear Charlotte.
As to my father. Poor Mr. Bingley, soon to be trampled upon by all the young women in Hertfordshire. If only such a paragon could be accompanied by a brother or two.
And there he is, Mr. Bingley.
Oh, Jane, Lizzie, is it him? Has he come?
Indeed, Mrs. Bennet. We're bringing his sister Caroline. He could come from Derbyshire.
Derbyshire? Oh, did you hear that, my girls? Mr. Bingley is from Derbyshire.
Mr. Bingley, we're so very pleased to have you at home, sir.
Not so pleased as we are, good sir. You and your whole village have been most welcome.
You're most welcome, sir. I do hope you enjoy American.
Thank you, Miss Lucas.
Mr. Bingley, may I present Mrs. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet?
I confess I had hoped for the opportunity of meeting your daughter, of whose beauty I have heard little else since arriving in town.
Oh, Mr. Bingley, you do us a good honor. May I introduce my eldest daughter, Miss Jane Bennet,
Bennet.
and my second eldest, Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
Charmed, Mrs.
My other daughters are engaged in present. Oh, there's Catherine and Lydia over there. And, oh, Mary plays the pianoforte. I dare say she is proficient at the instrument, though I cannot say so much for her singing.
Mamma,
But Jane, who finds no such deficiency in Jane, I dare say there's none so beautiful as she in all the country.
Indeed, madame, I agree. Miss Bennet, may I present my sister, Miss Caroline Bingley?
Miss Bingley, are you not pleased to see your brother so well situated in Netherfield?
Madam, I scarce know how to contain my elation.
And this is my good friend and master of the great Pemberley estate in Derbyshire, Mr. Darcy.
Pemberley, my dear fellow. Why, I've heard Pemberley is very grand indeed.
Thank you, Sir William.
Miss Bennet, would you honor me with that?
I should be most pleased to, Mr. Bingley. It seems as if Mr. Bingley's attentions are solely for Jane. The rest of the assembly, however, is quickly turning its attention to that of his friend, Mr. Darcy.
What a fine figure of a man! Such handsome features. Do you not agree, Lizzie?
He is certainly tall, Mamma.
Master of Pemberley Estate, what are we that is £10,000 a year?
10,000?
Why, that is twice what Bingley is worth! Oh, I declare, he must be the handsomest man who has ever been seen.
I wonder if Mamma would find him quite as handsome to hear a man of only 1,000 pounds.
Come, Darcy. I must have you dance.
I most certainly shall not. You know how much I despise dancing, unless I'm well acquainted with my partner.
But I hate to see you standing about in this stupid manner, for partners are scarce, and many young women would be...
At such an assembly as this, it would be unsupportable. Your sister is engaged at present, and there is not another woman in the room with whom dancing would not be a punishment.
Oh, good Lord, Darcy, I will not be as fastidious as you for a kingdom. I never met with so many pleasant, pretty girls in my life.
You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room.
Darcy, Jane Bennet is the most beautiful girl I ever beheld. Though look, one of her sisters, I dare say, is very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you.
She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Besides, I'm in no humor at present to give consideration to young ladies who are ignored by other men. So go back to your partner. Enjoy her smiles. You're wasting your time with me.
Well, was there ever more disagreeable man in the world?
In fairness, I don't think he did it here.
Did you hear him, Lizzie? Not tolerable. 'Tis true you're not so beautiful as Jane, Lizzie, but I dare say you are tolerable.
Thank you, Mamma.
I could never imagine making such inappropriate remarks in a public assembly. I say, Lizzie, another time, I would not dance with him if I were you.
I believe, Mum, I may safely promise you never to dance with Mr. Darcy. Perhaps he's not so handsome as Mr. Bingley after all.
No, indeed, most forbidden. So
abominably proud.
Perhaps, but as pride has never been, pride often does. One cannot wonder what the master of Bingley states. A young man of family, fortune, and everything in favour. If I may suggest, perhaps he's a right to be proud.
That is very true, and I could easily forgive his pride, if he had not mortified mine.
Pride is a very common failing, I believe. But in all that I have ever read, I am convinced that it is very common indeed, and that the human nature is particularly prone to it, and that there are very few of us who do not cherish a feeling of self-complacency, and a sort of some quality or another, real or imaginary. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. One can be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what have others think of us, and—
Oh, do hush, Mary. No one wants to hear your philosophies.
Yes, better come away, my dear. I believe you have delighted us long enough.
If my family had set out on purpose to embarrass themselves, they could not be playing their parts with any more success. Mercifully for all, this evening is nearing its conclusion.
I'll be sure to send word to Longbourn of when and where the new relations be cleared at Meryton, just as soon as Sir Owen has informed me himself.
Can you believe it, Kitty? An entire regiment, soon to be stationed here in our own village. You must promise to give us names of all the offices. And knowledge of the lodgings.
Why, Lydia!
I simply can't wait to see a whole militia full of soldiers in their red regimentals. Oh, Lord, yes, I cannot abide by a man who does not wear red regimentals.
I have suspected it for some time, but now I am quite convinced, madame, that we have two of the silliest girls in the country.
Oh, was it not a delightful evening? An excellent ball for Jane to be so admired. Only think of that, my dear. But she was the only creature in the room to know Mr. Bingley has the second dance.
Though he did stand up with Charlotte Luton, Mamma.
Yes, that quite vexed me.
And Mary King.
Yes.
And Lizzie.
But it was Jane he admired most, my dears.
I think I saw him dance with Mariah Lucas. And once with me.
If he had any compassion for me, he would not have danced half so much. For God's sake, say no more of his partners.
I do hope to see you very soon, Miss Bennet. Perhaps next when you walk through Meryton.
I would like that, Mr. Bingley.
Or sooner.
Would that this night had not passed so quickly. Good night, sir.
Miss Bennet, perhaps our paths will cross again during Bingley's stay in Hertfordshire.
I do not doubt it, Mr. Darcy, though I dare say it is unlikely to be at a ball such as this.
Oh?
I'm afraid our small village is ill-equipped to provide a dance partner tolerable enough to tempt you.
Lady Lucas's promise of a military regiment quartered at Meryton was not long delayed. Indeed, we are on this night invited to Lucas Lodge for their formal Meryton welcome, to the excessive delight of Lydia and Kitty, as well as Mamma, who is, of course, anxious for another opportunity to present Jane as an eligible match for Mr. Bingley.
Lizzie, he's just what a young man ought to be. Sensible, good-humored, lively, and I never saw such happy manners.
He is also handsome, which a young man ought to be if he possibly can. And he could not help but see that you were at least twice as pretty as every other woman in the room. Yes, I give you leave to like him. You liked many a stupider person.
Lizzie!
Mr. Bingley seems to admire Jane a great deal, Lizzie.
I'm happy for her, Charlotte. I believe she is soon likely to be very much in love.
If that is true, she'd do much better show more affection than she feels.
More affection? Dear Charlotte, they're barely acquaintances.
What does that signify? Bingley likes her sister, undoubtedly. But he may never do more than like her if she's not helping him on.
And she will, once she has a better understanding of his character, and as much as her gentle nature will allow.
Yes, but remember, Lizzie, Mr. Bingley's not known Jane's to pursue this mission, as you did. She must leave him no doubt of her affection. There's a few of us with the heart enough to truly love that encouragement. Mr. Bingley may lose interest if not just the kind of temper.
Colonel Forster will have your wrist steady, which place your sword. Miss Lydia, please!
And is my family made to appear more tolerable for my younger sister's refusal to guard their tempers? What does Mr. Darcy mean by listening to our conversation?
That is a question which only Mr. Darcy can answer.
My dear Charlotte, might you favor us in forfeiting the instruments? I believe we must provide our young friends with some alternative diversion, else their mindless energy tire us all. What a charming amusement for young people. And Mr. Darcy, I consider dancing one of the first refinements of all societies.
And all the less polished societies?
Sir?
Any savage can dance.
Ah, yes. Well, quite right. Very clever. But I doubt not that you're adept in the science yourself. Allow me to present you to this young lady as a very desirable partner.
Please, Sir William.
A capital idea, Father. I shall open the insert, Lizzie, and you know must follow.
You are a very strange creature by way of a friend.
Come now, Darcy. You cannot refuse to dance. I assure you, especially when so much beauty is before you.
Indeed, sir. I have not the least intention
I would be very honored to have the pleasure of dancing with you, Miss Bennet.
There now. You see, my dear, though this gentleman dislikes the amusement in general, he has no objection.
Mr. Darcy is all politeness.
And why should he not be? Who could ever object to such a partner?
Do you feel any inclination, Miss Bennet, to dance a reel? A reel, Miss Bennet.
Oh, I heard you before, but I could not immediately determine what to say in reply. You wanted me, I know, to say yes, so that you may despise my country tastes. But I always delight in cheating a person of such premeditated contempt. I have, therefore, made up my mind to tell you that I do not want to dance a reel at all. And now, despise me if you dare.
Indeed. I do not dare.
Astonishing!
I can readily guess what you are thinking.
I should imagine not.
You are thinking how insupportable it would be to pass many evenings with such low society. And I am quite of your opinion. The impropriety of such people.
Your conjecture is totally wrong. I assure you. My mind was more agreeably engaged.
Oh?
I was meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
Pray, would you tell me what lady has inspired such reflections?
Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
I am all astonishment. How long has she been a favorite? And when am I to wish you joy?
That is exactly the question I expect you to ask. A woman's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony, in a moment.
Nay, if you are so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled.
Oh, it is quite confirmed. Mr. Bingley has 5,000 a year.
You will have a charming mother-in-law.
This morning, Jane received a note from Netherfield, the contents of which, I must say, sparked the excitement of my mother, almost more than the recipient herself.
It is from Miss Bingley.
Oh, what does it say? What is it? Make haste and tell us.
My dear friends, my brother and Mr. Darcy are dining out with the officers.
Dining with the officers? I wonder why Lady Lucas did not tell us of this.
Girls! Shh.
If you are not so compassionate as to dine with me today, I shall be in danger of spending the entire afternoon in a state of intolerable boredom. Sweet Jane, do rescue me if you can, and come straight upon receipt of this note. Yours ever, Caroline Bingley.
So, Mr. Bingley is dining out. How very unlucky.
Papa, may I have the carriage?
No, you better go on horseback. It seems likely to rain, and then they will ask you to stay the night, and you'll get to see Mr. Bingley after all.
Ma!
Oh, saddle the horse, Mr. Bennet.
The next morning, we received another note from Netherfield.
I find myself very unwell this morning, which I suspect I must owe to my getting so drenched yesterday. My kind new friends insist on my staying and seeing the physician, Dr. Jones. Therefore, if you should hear of him having been to see me, do not be alarmed. Excepting a sore throat and a headache, there is not much the matter with me.
Well, my dear, if your daughter should have a dangerous fit of illness and die, it will be a comfort to know that it was all in the pursuit of Mr. Bingley.
Oh, people do not die of trifling colds. She will be well taken care of, and she will get to see Mr. Bingley. Oh, was this not an excellent plan of mine, Lizzie?
I must go to her, Mamma.
Go to her?
I cannot leave poor Jane in the care of Miss Bingley.
Is this a hint to me, Lizzie? To send for the horses?
No, indeed. The distance is but 3 miles. I would much rather walk.
Walk? In all that mud and dirt? You will not be fit to be seen when you get there.
I shall be very fit to see Jane, which is all I want.
I admire your benevolence, but every impulse of feeling should be guided by reason, and in my opinion, exertion should always be in proportion to what is required.
We'll go as far as Meryton with you, Lizzie.
Yes, and if we make haste, perhaps we may see something of Captain Carter.
Miss Bennet, you are most welcome.
Forgive the intrusion, but I have come to inquire after my sister.
You have walked here from Longbourn.
It is an easy distance.
Of course it is, Miss Eliza. We must allow for all the young ladies of Hertfordshire to be excellent walkers, Mr. Darcy.
Excuse me, but how fares my sister?
She has slept ill and cannot yet leave her room, but I'm sure she will fare much better now that you have arrived. She'll take you to her directly.
How nonsensical! What does she mean by scampering about the countryside because her sisters are cold? Her hair, so untidy, so blowsy.
So it would seem.
You noticed it, Mr. Darcy, I'm sure. Surely you would not wish to see your sister making such an exhibition.
Certainly not.
It's a shame, Mr. Darcy. I'm afraid this adventure has rather affected your admiration of Miss Elizabeth's pretty face and fine eyes.
Not at all. They were brightened by the exercise.
I hope you won't forget her wild appearance, Charles. Her petticoats, 6 inches deep in dirt. I'm absolutely certain.
Actually, Caroline, I find I often do not take note of petticoats, muddy or otherwise. I thought Miss Elizabeth looked remarkably well.
Brother, do be sensible. Do you truly intend to make overtures for young Jane when her sister sees fit to walk 4 or 5 miles?
3 miles.
Whatever it is, above her ankles in dirt and alone. Do you not think this shows an abominable sort of country town independence?
It shows an affection for her sister that is very pleasing.
Charles, you know I wish with all my heart that sweet Jane were well settled. With such sisters, such low connections, there is little chance of it. My Miss Bennet told me yesterday that her uncle lives somewhere in Cheapside.
Cheapside?
It would make her not one jot less agreeable to me if she had uncles to fill all of Cheapside.
But with such relations, it must materially lessen the chances of marrying well, Bingley.
Their chances, Darcy?
Jane is still very weak, though I finally had the comfort of seeing her sleep soundly. With her improvement, however, comes an unwanted side effect. I am no longer able to plead Jane's illness as my excuse for remaining above stairs.
I do wish you would join us. The trumps aren't on my side tonight.
I do not believe I could be of any help, sir. I have not the skill at the card table of my mother or aunts.
Miss Eliza despises cards. She is a great reader and takes pleasure in nothing else.
I deserve neither such praise nor censure. I am not a great reader, and I take pleasure in many things.
In nursing your sister, I'm sure you take pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Bingley.
Could I fetch you another book? Only I wish my collection were larger, for your benefit and for my credit.
I assure you, this suits perfectly.
I'm surprised, Charles, that Father should have left you so small a collection of books. What a delightful library you've at Pemberley, Mr. Darcy.
As it should be. It has been the particular project of my sister this past year to see it expanded and maintained.
Oh, dear Georgiana, is Miss Darcy
A young woman can be accomplished as they are.
All, Bingley?
Yes, all. I am never introduced to a young woman without being informed that she was very accomplished.
I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen really accomplished.
Then you must comprehend a great deal in the notion of it.
I do.
Oh, certainly. No young lady can really be esteemed accomplished who does not have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, and modern languages. To deserve the word, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walk, the tone of her voice, her dress and expressions.
And to this, she must add something more substantial.
And what is this, Darcy?
The improvement of her mind by extensive reading.
I am no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women, Mr. Darcy. I now rather wonder at your knowing any.
Are you so severe upon your own sex?
I never saw such a woman. I never saw such taste and capacity and intelligence and elegance all in one lady, Mr. Darcy.
Perhaps you lack the proper connections, Miss Eliza. I must protest that we have met many young women in our acquaintance who answer to that description.
Have you? Well then, I humbly leave Mr. Darcy in your capable hands, so that you may extol their virtues to his satisfaction. I confess, I have nothing to offer that could so please Mr. Darcy.
Eliza Bennet is one of those young ladies who seek to recommend themselves to the other sex by undervaluing their own. It may awaken some men, but in my opinion, it is a vile device, a very mean art in the pursuit of a man's affection.
Undoubtedly. Though, I might add that there is a certain meanness in all the arts which a lady employs in pursuit of a man's affections.
Such insufferable snobbery. As soon as Jane was the slightest bit better, I wrote to Mamma and begged her to send the carriage. This is her reply.
After speaking with Dr. Jones in town, we have agreed that it would not be at all advisable and requested that Jane trespass on his kindness a little longer.
The next day passed as tediously as the first. That night I sent another post to Mamma, this time informing her that both Jane and Dr. Jones agreed that she was much improved.
Unfortunately, Mr. Bennet cannot spare the horses from the farm today. Do convey to Mr. Bingley our sincerest thanks to his good attentions to our dear Jane, and beg that he attend to her a little while longer.
I have now been here almost a week. Honestly, were it not for sweet Jane and her attentive Mr. Bingley, I might truly go mad.
Can I now persuade you to take a turn about the room? I assure you, it is very refreshing. Will you not join our party, Mr. Darcy?
That would defeat your purpose.
Our purpose? What can you mean, Miss Eliza?
I do not know, but I believe the surest way of disappointing him will to be asked nothing about it.
I do not object to explaining. You walk because you know that your figures appear to the greatest advantage while walking, and you wish for me to admire them from my chair.
Shocking! I've never heard anything so abominable. How shall we punish him, Miss Bennet?
Nothing is so easy. If you wish it, tease him, laugh at him.
Tease him, Mr. Darcy. Tease calmness of temper and presence of mind.
Is Mr. Darcy so upright that he is not to be laughed at?
Of course not. But I have striven in life to avoid certain weaknesses, which often expose oneself to ridicule.
Such as vanity and pride?
Vanity. Vanity is a weakness indeed. But pride, where there's a real superiority of mind and upbringing, pride will always be under good regulation.
I see. Miss Bingley, I fear I must disappoint you. Mr. Darcy has no defect to laugh at. He owns it himself without disguise.
I have made no such assertion. I have faults enough, Miss Bennet. Some may call my temper resentful. I do not easily forgive the follies of others, nor their offenses towards myself. My good opinion, once lost, is lost forever.
That is a failing indeed. I really cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me.
There is, I believe, in everyone, a tendency to some particular evil, a natural defect.
Yours is the propensity to hate everybody.
Yours is to willfully misunderstand them.
I wrote to Mamma again.
Lizzie, stay where you are.
Only after a full week's time is Mamma satisfied with his scheme. Unfortunately, she's finally sent the carriage, and it's not empty.
Oh, Mr. Bingley! If not for such good friends, I do not know what would become of our dear girl.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bingley, Miss Bingley, for your unexampled generosity.
Are you quite sure you're well enough to return? You might catch another cold. We would only be...
I would not dream of trespassing on your kindness any further, sir. I assure you I am quite recovered and...
Mr. Bingley, do you not remember your promise to throw a ball once you settled in Netherfield?
Lydia?
'Tis nearly a month now, and it'd be the most shameful thing in the world if you did not keep your word.
You are perfectly right. In fact, once your sister is at home and most assuredly recovered, shall please name the very day of the ball.
There, girls, you see? Mrs. Bingley, do you not have the most charming brother? Charming. What a gentlemanly, amiable man you are, Mr. Bingley.
Thank you, ma'am.
That is my idea of good breeding. And those who fancy themselves more important and never open their mouths quite mistake the matter.
Mamma!
Come, we must not take up any more of Mr. Bingley's time.
Oh, yes, my dear, so conscientious, my Jane. Do you not agree, Mr. Bingley?
Most assuredly, ma'am.
I don't like to boast of my own child, but it is what everybody says. Why, when Jane was only 15, there was a young gentleman at my brother Gardner's, so much in love with her that he wrote us the poetry
And thus ended his affection. I wonder who first discovered the efficacy of poetry in driving away love.
I have often thought of poetry as the food of love.
Of a fine, stout, healthy love it may. Everything nourishes what is strong already. But if it be only a thin, slight sort of infatuation, one good sonnet will stop it entirely away.
To my speech he makes no answer. And why does he smile so? In the spirit of mockery, surely, for our mother's behaviour does Jane no great favours in securing Bingley's affection. Though, in truth, the man does not seem to mind Mamma's impertinence. Miss Bingley certainly wishes to escape the possibility of such a relation. But what will any of this be to Mr. Darcy? Alas, I resolve to think of him alone, for though I am glad to find him returned to London, there is soon to be another young man, but more immediate concern.
Take care, my dear, for I have reason to expect an addition to our family party.
Mr. Bingley? Why, Jane, you never dropped a word. Lizzie, ring the bell. I must speak with the cook.
It is not Mr. Bingley. It is my cousin, Mr. Collins, a person I've never met. Though, when I'm dead, he may throw you all out of this house as soon as he pleases.
Oh, no, I cannot bear to hear the name mentioned.
You must bear it, Mrs. Bennet, for he wrote some 3 weeks ago.
Dear Sir, having received ordination and having been so fortunate as to be honoured by the right hand of my patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, I feel it's my duty as a clergyman to establish peace within our two families. On these grounds, I hope that my being next in the entail of Longbourn will not lead you to reject this olive branch. I cannot help but feel concerned at being the means of injuring your poor, amiable daughters once you are dead, and beg leave to apologize for it, and to make every possible amends.
At 2 o'clock, therefore, we may expect this eloquent, peacekeeping gentleman.
In point of composition, his letter does not seem defective. The idea of the olive branch, perhaps, is not wholly new, yet I think it is well expressed.
There, Mrs. Bennet. Are you satisfied?
If under the patronage of Lady Catherine, your cousin wishes to remedy the dreadful entail and make amends to the girls, I shall not be the one to discourage him.
I cannot make him out. Once you are dead. And what can he possibly mean by apologizing for being next in the entail? Can this be a sensible man, Papa?
Oh, no, my dears. I think not. I have great hope in finding him quite the reverse. And here he is, at 2 o'clock exactly, punctual to his time.
Good cousin, dear Mrs. Bennet, you are to be commended on keeping such happy lodgings here at Longbourn.
Lodgings, sir?
I confess I've never seen sweeter arrangements. Why, I'm much impressed by the size of this apartment. It reminds me very much of a small summer breakfast parlour at Rosings Park.
Breakfast parlour?
Indeed, why, oh, my dear Mrs. Bennet, I am mortified that you should take offence under my observation. I assure you that Rosings, the home of my most esteemed patroness, is very grand indeed. Why, she has asked me, very grand indeed. Why, the chimney piece at Rosings alone cost £800.
£800, dear boy? Is that so? My, could we be more fortunate in our guest, do you think, Lizzie?
Indeed, you could not, though I take no credit to myself. I owe such good fortune entirely to Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Why, she has asked me to dine twice already at Rosings, and has been so kind as to approve of the first 2 sermons at my new parish.
How very kind of her. May I introduce?
And has deigned to approve all the alterations I have made to the parsonage, even venturing to suggest that I install shelves in the closet upstairs. Is that not a most clever idea, Mr. Bennet?
Shelves? In the closet? My dear, how have we ever gotten on without such dazzling inventiveness?
Mr. Collins, do allow me to...
Oh, how impertinent of me. This must be your fine family of daughters. Allow me to say, Mrs. Bennet, that while I have heard much of their beauty, fame has fallen short of the truth.
What a generous compliment.
I'm pleased you think so. I am happy on every occasion to offer those little delicate compliments which are always acceptable to ladies.
I say, it is lucky that you possess the talent to flatter with such delicacy. May I ask whether it precedes the impulse of the moment, or is the result of previous study?
Chiefly they arise from the moment, Mr. Bennet, though I do sometimes compose little elegant arrangements which may be adapted to suit a variety of occasions. Observe, Mrs. Bennet, your lips are as red as the blood of a fattened calf led to slaughter.
Delightful. He's everything I hoped for, is he? May I suggest that you seize the opportunity of inviting Mr. Collins on your walk into Meryton, that he may become better acquainted with our little village?
Will you not join us, Papa?
Oh no, my dears, for I confess, I can think of nothing save the enchanting possibility of installing shelves in our own closets. My dears, please excuse me.
Mrs. Bennet, I beg that you did not suspicion any hint of offense just now in wishing to see your daughters soon married.
Not at all. I am sure you are sincere, and I wish the same good fortunes for my girls, else they end up destitute.
You allude, perhaps, to the fate of your husband's estate?
I do indeed, sir. It is a grievous thing for my girls' fathers' fortunes to be entailed away from them.
I assure you, madam, that I am very sensible to the hardship of my fair cousins. It is, in fact, my reason for seeking this meeting at Longbourn. You see, my patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, advised me most splendidly. During my last visit to Rosings, she said,
Mr. Collins, you must marry. Choose properly. Let it be an active, useful sort of person. Not brought up high, but able to make a small income go a good way. If you find such a woman, bring her to Hunsford Parsonage, where I will visit her to give my approval.
Now allow me to say, Mrs. Bennet, that I take Lady Catherine de Bourgh's generous condescension as among one of the best of the advantages in my power to offer your daughters. For who else could—
Mr. Collins, am I to understand that your plan to make amends to the dreadful entail is to marry one of my daughters?
Indeed. Did I not speak plainly? I do so hope to always be succinct.
Ah, Mr. Collins!
I thought it an excellent idea, and her ladyship quite agreed. So I came to Longbourn, meaning to choose one of your daughters, if, of course, I found them as beautiful as they are commonly reported. Upon seeing them, madam, I am decided. The, eldest girl?
Jane?
A lovely choice, unequaled beauty, and I think, in the interest of seniority, don't you agree?
Your taste does you credit, sir, though I must tell you, we very soon suspect Jane to be engaged to Mr. Bingley of Netherfield.
Oh.
But may I suggest Elizabeth?
Your second born?
Second only to Jane in both birth and beauty.
Done, madam.
Mamma, it seems, is stirring the fire, for the man she could not bear to speak of earlier today is now her dearest companion. The nature of her latest scheme, I can hardly guess. Though I have my suspicions. These cares will fade, however, for we have at last arrived in Meryton, and Captain Denny is introducing us to
my good friend George Wickham.
At your service, my ladies.
Why, Denny, where have you been hiding so tall a gentleman from our acquaintance? Denny feels like losing as a dancing partner, Lydia.
No, indeed, Miss Bennet. Miss Wickham just arrived from town.
From London, sir?
Indeed.
'Tis a pity he doesn't follow in the offices of his friend, isn't it, Kitty? For he'd look so much handsomer in a red coat.
Lydia.
Aye, then Denny and Carter might welcome him with a parade of sabers and trumpets.
Kitty, please. Mr. Wickham, do excuse my younger sister's impertinence. They have eyes for little else than the men of the regiment these days.
Oh, not at all, Miss Bennet. In fact, your sisters may soon get their wish. I have just this morning accepted a commission into the officer corps.
There, Lydia, you see? He'll be a soldier after all.
Perhaps you all might show Mr. Collins the lay of the shops. Lizzie, he does so wish to become acquainted with Meryton.
My dear Elizabeth, you are very generous in your attentions to me. I promise I will not be gone from your side a moment longer than necessary.
Adieu. Take your time, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins is a quite courteous fellow. Is he not the new vicar at Hunsford Parsonage?
Yes. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, only with its benefactress.
Not Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
Yes. Are you acquainted?
Heavens, no. But I believe we may have our fair share of her influence through our esteemed guest. Forgive my rudeness, Mr. Wickham. I fear we have all made a rather ridiculous first impression.
Oh, nothing of the kind. In fact, I find your relations to be quite charming. Believe me, Miss Bennet, I consider myself fortunate enough to have been both raised in privilege and reduced to poverty. Though hard, my life has afforded me the desire to make friends based on the merits of their own character, rather than those of their relations.
Can such a man truly exist?
Look, Jane, it's Mr. Bingley.
How fortuitous. We were just on our way to Longbourn to inquire after your health.
You are too kind, sir.
Are you recovered from your ordeal, dear Jane? Mrs. Bennet, I confess it is a great honor to see you.
Well, I thank you, sir, for inquiring.
Oh, well, you see how attentive your friend is, Jane. Oh, Mr. Bingley, may I introduce to you Mr. Collins, our guest, and Mr. Bennet's cousin?
Miss Bennet. Aye.
Mr. Darcy.
Extraordinary.
I am afraid, Miss Bennet, it cannot have escaped you, that very cold meeting just now.
Indeed, I would not wish to pry, but
Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
as much as I ever wish to be. I have spent 6 days in the same house with him, far too long to spend with such a disagreeable person.
I have no right to give my opinion. I've known him far too long to be a fair judge. Has Mr. Darcy been in Hertfordshire long?
About a month.
And is he well thought of?
Mr. Wickham, he is not at all liked in any house, save for Netherfield. Everybody is disgusted with his pride.
Cannot pretend to be sorry to hear it. I've been a disappointed man, Miss Bennet. A military life is not what I was intended for. Mr. Darcy has done me a terrible disservice.
Lizzie, Mr. Bingley has named the day of the ball. We are all invited to Netherfield next Tuesday. And he has promised to invite all the officers, Mr. Wickham. We do hope to see you there.
Oh, you may depend on it, Miss Bennet.
Do you dance, Mr. Wickham?
Oh, most readily.
There, you see, Denny? You'll have a rival after all.
Going out Shaughnessy, eh, Wickham?
Oh, Mr. Bingley, we are very favoured in your personal invitation, and you are so generous to invite Mr. Collins as well. Is he not, Lizzie?
Indeed, but I dread you do not suffer a rebuke from the Archbishop, sir. Would it be appropriate for a clergyman to attend a ball?
Dearest cousin, thank you most emphatically for your generous consideration, but I feel that a ball given by a young man of character can have no evil tendency.
But would Lady Catherine approve?
I am so far from rejecting the dancing myself that I hope to be honored with the hands of all my fair cousins. In fact, I take this opportunity of soliciting yours, Miss Elizabeth, for the first 2 dances.
Promised to Mr. Collins by my own mother, and I so dearly wished to have been engaged by Mr. Wickham for those dances. I confess, the thought entered my mind as rapidly as it would have Lydia's. Everything he said was agreeable. Such manners and ease of expression. Why, even the dullest topic he rendered interesting. And in the days leading up to the Netherfield ball, my thoughts of dancing a great deal with Mr. Wickham was surpassed only by my desire to learn what terrible disservice had been wrought upon him by Mr. Darcy.
Miss Elizabeth, thank you most emphatically for the dance.
It was my pleasure, Mr. Collins.
I dare say we were excellently matched on the floor.
Quite, though I believe.
I fear I may seem brash, but...
Miss Bennet, would you favor me with your hand for the next two dances?
Thank you, Mr. Wickham. I would be delighted. Excuse me, Mr. Collins. Thank you.
I must admit, the gesture is wholly selfish. I've been hoping for a dance with you since our walk together in Meryton.
As I've been hoping for the chance of speaking with you.
Forgive me, Miss Bennet. You are both charming and transparent. You're no doubt curious as to the nature of my acquaintance with Mr. Darcy.
I confess I have thought of little else. It is impossible to imagine just how he has been the means of your ruin.
He's not always been bad. You see, my father had the management of all of Mr. Darcy's estate.
His steward?
Precisely. Me and Darcy spent the better part of our youth together. I dare say we were once his brothers. This surprises you.
How can it not?
You see, old Mr. Darcy was my godfather, and upon my own father's death, he promised to provide for me. He intended me for the church, and was to provide me with a living and a parish as soon as one became available.
And did he?
No, he died before one became vacant, at which time young Mr. Darcy gave the life I should have had to another man. I was left penniless.
Oh, good heavens! How could Mr. Darcy dishonor his own father's will?
There was such informality in the terms of it. The law was not in my favor.
This is quite shocking. He deserves to be publicly disgraced.
Oh, someday he will be, but it shall not be by me. Till I can forget the father, I can never defy nor expose the son.
I had not thought Mr. Darcy so bad as this. What can have induced him to behave so cruelly?
I believe he grew jealous. Older Mr. Darcy was uncommonly attached to me, though I was but the poor son of his steward. Had the father liked me less, the son might have borne with me better.
Such malicious revenge, such injustice. I wonder now at his intimacy with Mr. Bingley, who seemed so amiable. He cannot know what Mr. Darcy is.
Probably not. Mr. Darcy can please where he chooses. Among those he considers his equals, he is a very different man.
Excuse me, Miss Elizabeth, but may I have a word with Mr. Wickham?
Ah, Miss Eliza, your sister has been telling me how much you favor George Wickham. Though I'm sure he failed to mention he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's overseer.
Yes, he informed me of that himself.
Did he? Well, let me advise you, as a friend, do not trust in all his assertions. I don't know the particulars, but I do know he treated Mr. Darcy in most infamous manners.
Has he?
I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favorite's guilt. But really, considering his lineage, when one cannot expect much better.
His guilt and his lineage appear by your account to be the same. You accuse him of nothing worse than being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward, a relation he proudly acknowledged.
I beg your pardon. My interference was kindly meant.
Miss Bennet, I regret that I have been called to town on urgent business. I must painfully withdraw my invitation to dance.
Why?
I'm sorry, Miss Elizabeth, but I do not believe his business would have called him away just now. It was for a certain gentleman.
Charlotte, I have much to tell you.
We have been most highly gratified, my dear sir. This very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong in the highest of society.
Thank you, Lady Lucas.
Allow me to say that your fair partner, Miss Bingley, did not disgrace you, and I must certainly hope to have the pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event shall take place.
Such a well-suited match. Wouldn't you agree? Well, congratulations with influence.
How astonishing! For Mr. Wickham have endured such unkindness. I wonder if they have been deceived in some way. Perhaps some misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation? How can you think of defending him?
My dearest Lizzie, do you consider what a disgraceful life such an event take place for Mr. Darcy? To be treating his fellow guys such a way, it's impossible. No man so clearly his value could be capable of it. And what of Mr. Bingley? Can his intimate friend be so deceived in him?
I can more easily believe Mr. Bingley's being deceived than Mr. Wickham inventing such a history.
It is difficult indeed, most distressing. One does not know what to think.
I beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think.
Miss Bennet, would you do me the honor of joining me in the next waltz?
Mr. Darcy, I can think of no other.
Don't be a simpleton, Lizzie. You surely know the whole of it. Don't you fancy if Mr. Wickham needs your ambassador men 10 times as well?
Thank you, yes. I do so enjoy this waltz. It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked of the dance. You ought to remark on the size of the room.
Do you talk by a rule then when you are dancing?
Usually. Though we may arrange it so we may say as little as possible.
Do you seek to gratify my feelings at the present moment or your own?
Both.
Do you often walk to Meryton with your sisters?
Quite often. When you met us the other day, we were forming a new acquaintance. Mr. Wickham.
Yes, George Wickham has the happy ability of making friends. Whether he is equally capable of keeping them is less certain.
It seems he has been unlucky to lose your friendship, Mr. Darcy. I remember you once saying that you do not easily forgive the faults of others. Are you very cautious, then, in first forming that resentment?
I am. May I ask what these questions tend?
Merely to the illustration of your character. I'm trying to make it out.
And what is your success?
I do not get on at all. I hear such different accounts of you as puzzle me exceedingly.
Perhaps it is best not to try and sketch my character out at the present moment.
But if I do not take the likeness now, I shall never have another opportunity.
I do not mean to suspend any good pleasure of yours, Miss Bennet. Good night.
Insolent man! Very soon it seemed that the Netherfield ball was to be the catalyst for a series of equally disappointing affairs to follow.
Lord, what is to become of us? What are we to do? Heavens, girls, what is the matter?
The regiment, Mamma. They're to leave in a fortnight.
Aye, they're going to be encamped near Brighton for the whole summer.
Oh, Papa, might we go to Brighton on holiday?
Go to Brighton?
Oh, yes, what a lovely idea.
You would not wish to see us so miserable all summer, Papa.
And Colonel Forster's wife has designs of taking up sea bathing in Brighton.
Oh, a little sea bathing would set me afervor.
Sea bathing, eh? What do you say to that, Mary?
Though my sisters must be congenial with the generality of female minds, I confess, sea bathing would have no charms for me. I should infinitely prefer both.
Bravo! For once I'm in complete support of your delightful penchant for philosophy. Come, Mrs. Bennet.
Papa!
No, I have not even the slightest intention of yielding. The regiment shall go to Brighton, and we shall remain here at Longbourn.
Poor Lydia, though her anguish is mild compared to that of dear James.
I've received a letter from Miss Bingley. Oh, Lizzie, I'm quite distressed. Mr. Bingley has left Netherfield, and Caroline writes that he has no intention of returning.
Impossible. Jane, no one who has seen the two of you together can doubt his affection.
Caroline insists that Mr. Bingley is in no hurry to return from London. She even goes as far as wishing us much joy for Christmas at Hertfordshire. It is evident by this that he intends to stay through winter at least.
It is only evident what Miss Bingley intends. It does not signify how he feels.
How can you think so? If Mr. Bingley had any intention to further our acquaintance, would he have not come to Longbourn himself before departing?
Jane, your humility usually does you credit, but in this case it is your enemy. The truth is plain. Miss Bingley sees that her brother is in love with you, but for her we're not rich enough, not grand enough. On this point of view, she and Mr. Darcy are as one. So she convinced him to leave Netherfield.
I cannot believe that Caroline could be so deceitful.
But,
Lizzie, I know your disposition toward her, but I have not the capacity to indulge in such fanciful ideas. It is clear. Mr. Bingley does not feel for me as I had hoped.
Ugh. Can no one, save for myself and Mr. Wickham, understand the true nature of such proud, arrogant snobbery as is displayed by the likes of Caroline Bingley and Mr. Darcy? Still, even Jane's news is nothing to the mortification I am about to endure.
Oh, yes, I'm sure she'd be very happy and could have no objection. There now, I shall leave you some privacy.
Dear ma'am, do not go. Mr. Collins can have nothing to say to me that anybody need not hear.
Nonsense, Lizzie. I desire that you remain. Mr. Collins wishes to speak to you alone.
Mamma.
Lizzie, stay.
Believe me, my dear Elizabeth, your modesty adds to your other perfections.
Mr. Collins,
You can hardly doubt the purpose of my desired discourse.
Mr. Collins, please
Almost
understand.
as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. But before I run away with my feelings, I must state my reasons for marriage.
Mr. Collins, please understand that...
First, I think it a right thing that every clergyman set the example of matrimony in his parish.
Quite right. However...
And second, I believe that it would add greatly to my happiness.
Sir, I beg of...
And third, that it is the particular recommendation of my most esteemed patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Why, she advised me most splendidly, my dear cousin, and you can be assured to be favoured with equal condescension once we are married. Why, just before my journey to London, she said,
Mr. Collins, you must marry. Choose properly. Let her be...
You are too hasty, sir. You forget I have made no answer. I am honoured by the compliment of your proposal, but it will be impossible to accept.
I know that it is usual for young ladies to reject the addresses of the man they secretly mean to accept. When I do the honour of asking again, I hope to hear a more favourable answer.
Upon my word, your expectation is rather extraordinary. I am perfectly serious in my refusal.
You flatter me, my dear cousin, but I know that my hand is worthy of your acceptance, and being that I am to inherit this estate after your father's death, and your own dowry is so small, it's unlikely that another offer of marriage will ever be made to you. I must attribute your rejection to your wish of increasing my love by suspense.
Mr. Collins, can I not speak plainer? I will not marry you.
You are uniformly charming.
Mr. Collins, let me congratulate you on your engagement.
Thank you, Mrs. Bennet. I do hope to be engaged as soon as your elegant daughter consents to receive my hand.
She has not consented?
Not yet, though I have every reason to trust that her refusal must naturally flow from her bashful modesty and delicacy of character.
Bashful modesty? Lizzie! Mr. Bennet!
Madam?
Oh, depend on it, Mr. Collins. Lizzie shall be brought to reason.
Brought to reason?
Oh, she is a headstrong, foolish girl, but I will make her accept you.
Pardon me, Mrs. Bennet, but if she is really headstrong and foolish, I fear she might not be a very appropriate wife to Lady to me. Forgive me, but I am invited this evening to dine with Sir William and Lady Lucas. Perhaps it would be better for me to go there for the remainder of my stay.
Mr. Collins, wait, Mr. Bennet! Oh, Mr. Bennet, we are in an uproar. You must speak to Lizzie, for she vows she will not have him.
I have not the pleasure of understanding. About what do you luster, madame?
Mr. Collins and Lizzie. Oh, Lizzie vows she will not marry Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins begins to say he will not have Lizzie.
Let her be called in. She shall hear my opinion.
Lizzie, come here, child.
My dear, you are summoned here on a matter of grave importance. It has come to my attention that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage, and that this offer you have refused.
I have, sir.
And that your mother insists upon your accepting it. Have I got it right, Mrs. Bennet?
Yes. Oh, I will never see her again.
Very well. We now come to the point. An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day onward, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do.
For days now, I have been the least favorite of my mother's children, and my father the very bane of her existence. Indeed, not an hour has passed without some allusion to the fact that I've ruined us all. Father bears it all with great amusement, and I as well, for Mr. Collins is true to his word. He has left Longbourn, and is now staying at Lucas Lodge. My only regret is my poor friend Charlotte, having to endure the same insipid conversation we had before.
Dear Elizabeth.
Oh, Charlotte, I was just thinking of you. What news from Lucas Lodge?
Lizzie, I feel I've been a great disappointment to you.
Nonsense. What an odd thing to say.
Do heed what I have to tell you, Lizzie. You know that Mr. Collins has been a guest in my father's house.
Of course. Allow me to apologize for the unfortunate awkwardness. I fear our family has burdened yours with the most ridiculous of guests, and...
Lizzie, I've promised to marry him.
Who?
I'm engaged. To Mr. Collins?
The more I see of the world, the more I'm dissatisfied with it.
Mr. Collins is a respectable and eligible match.
Every day confirms my belief in the failings of human character.
And you know I'm not so romantic as you and Jane.
Is this to be the end of good sense in Hertfordshire?
Remember, Lizzie, I am one of a very large family, and I do so wish to be settled with ease of obeying my parents. Can you not wish me joy?
Charlotte, I'm very happy for you. Please allow me to express my most heartfelt wishes for a good marriage.
Lizzie, I just depend on hearing you very often. You will write, will you not?
Certainly.
And you'll come see me?
Why, we shall often meet in Hertfordshire.
I'm not likely to leave my new home for some time now, Lizzie. Promise me, Lizzie. Promise me you'll come to Hunford Parsonage on a guest.
Well, Lizzie, off to see the new Mrs. Collins.
I am.
Foolish girl. I used to think of Charlotte Lucas a girl of tolerable sense. I do hope your mother soon learns to make the most of it.
As do I.
You must promise to think on me with pity, Elizabeth.
Pity, sir?
For while you are away, I believe our evening conversation will lose much of its animation.
Papa.
And nearly all of its sense.
No, indeed.
There now, be a good girl. Oh, and be sure to write and tell us all about what you think of
Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Do not make yourself uneasy about your apparel, dear cousin.
Lady Catherine will not think worse for your being poorly dressed.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
You're a very genteel, pretty sort of girl.
Thank you, your ladyship.
She has how many sisters?
4, ma'am.
And are any of your younger sisters out?
Yes, ma'am, all.
All? What? All 5? My nephews will be most shocked to hear it. Don't you agree, Mr. Collins? 'Tis most irregular. Your sisters must be very young.
My youngest is not 16.
All 5 out at once without their elder sisters married? How very odd!
Perhaps, but I think it would be very hard upon young sisters to not have their share of society, simply because the elder sisters have not yet married, ma'am.
Upon my word, Miss Bennet, my nephews will think you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. Was your governess so neglectful in checking your manner?
We had no governess.
No governess? 5 daughters and no governess? Your mother must have been quite a slave to her education.
That was not precisely the case.
Do you at least play the pianoforte, Miss Bennet? Do you sing?
A little.
Oh, well, thank heaven for that. Mr. Collins, when my nephews arrive, we shall hear Miss Bennet play and sing.
An ingenious plan, your ladyship.
Pray, who are these nephews whose presence even Lady Catherine must wait to be graced with?
Oh, Lizzie, do forgive me.
Why? What is it?
I quite forgot to mention.
Charlotte?
Lady Catherine's nephews are...
Colonel Fitzwilliam and Mr. Darcy, ma'am.
Mr. Darcy?
Miss Bennet.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Darcy, you never mentioned she'd be so near Rosings.
I didn't know, Fitzwilliam.
I'm so glad to meet you at last, Miss Bennet.
At last, Colonel?
Why, my cousin Darcy speaks of little else than his recent adventures in Hertfordshire.
Does he?
Indeed. And I am so grateful to find such a welcome relief to have be near Rosings. I feel my Aunt Catherine can be a rather challenging conversationalist.
You flatter me, sir. But I'm not so much of a relief.
Really, I've heard quite a different account.
Do you mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in such a state, having given your cousin what is, I am sure, an ungenerous account of our conversations?
I by no means could form any design of frightening you, Miss Bennet.
What is that you're saying, Darcy? Fitzwilliam, what are you telling Miss Bennet? What are you talking of?
We are talking of, music, madam, music.
Music? Then pray speak loud. I must have my share in the conversation. Miss Bennet has consented to favoring us with a song this evening, though I entertain no notion she'll be a great proficient. We shall see how poorly she is fared without a governess.
Indeed, madam. What say you to that, Miss Bennet? Shall you disgrace us all with a performance unequal to her ladyship's standards?
I'm afraid so. On this point, Lady Catherine and I are in agreement. I'm not so proficient at the pianoforte. Am I, Mr. Darcy? I believe you once had the displeasure of hearing me play at Netherfield?
Astonishing. Allow me to profess my deepest admiration for your wit and spirit, Miss Bennet. I don't often see Darcy at a loss for words.
Thank you for the compliments, but I cannot accept them. Surely, as his cousin, you have far more leave to behave with as much familiarity as I dare. I must beg your forgiveness.
You may beg for it, but I shan't give it. Might you favor me with a walk through Rosings Park?
Where are they going? Where are you going, Fitzwilliam? I'm entitled to know!
Do you mean to stay long at Rosings, Colonel?
I'm at Darcy's disposal. He pays a visit to his aunt every year in honor of his late mother.
Your cousin cannot fend for himself amongst such glistening condescension?
He can, but he likes to have his own way. I suspect you already know that.
Oh yes, I know a great deal of Mr. Darcy's way. I had the pleasure of spending a week in his company at the estate of his friend, Mr. Bingley. Are you at all acquainted?
The Bingleys, yes, I know them a little. Mr. Bingley is a pleasant gentleman. A great friend of Darcy's.
Yes, I dare say he takes prodigious care of him.
Indeed, in those points where Mr. Bingley is in most need. Why, from something Darcy said during our journey here, I have reason to believe Mr. Bingley very much indebted to him.
Indebted to him? Why?
Well, it is a delicate matter.
You may depend on my silence, sir. What did he say?
He only conveyed his relief at having saved Bingley from a most imprudent marriage. Of course, he would not mention names or particulars, so I can only suspect it had been Bingley.
Did he give you reasons for his interference?
I understand there were some very strong objections against the lady.
And why was he to be the judge? Was Mr. Bingley not his own master?
Miss Bennet, are you quite all right?
Forgive me, Colonel. I have a sudden headache. I must beg to return to Hunsford. Strong objections to the lady. Objections to sweet Jane. Oh, how I long suspected some degree of Mr. Darcy's influence in Miss Bingley's scheme. But to be the chief architect in Bingley's separation from Jane. Darcy, who is nothing to Bingley except a friend. Why should he care who he marries?
Lizzie?
Yes, Charlotte?
There's someone here to see you.
Miss Bennet, forgive my intrusion.
Intrusion? You?
It's just Fitzwilliam. He said you had a headache and
I'm better now.
Miss Bennet, that is, might I inquire? In vain I have struggled. It will not do. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. From almost our first meeting in Hertfordshire, I have failed to repress my feelings, for they are born of such passions that I could hardly find the words to speak for fear of giving myself away or giving you false hope of receiving my attentions. Your liveliness of mind, Miss Bennet, the severity of your wit, your eyes, have me utterly defeated. I am aware of your inferiority of station, the degradation I am sure to receive in the eyes of society, and the objectionable nature of your family, whose station in life is so decidedly beneath my own. Nevertheless, I have formed so affectionate an attachment to be unable to conquer it, despite my better judgment. I do hope to be relieved of my anxiety and rewarded by your accepting my hand in marriage.
Mr. Darcy, in such a case as this, I believe one is expected to express gratitude for the feelings related, however unequally they may be returned, but I cannot. I have never desired your good opinion, and you have bestowed it most unwillingly. I am sorry to cause anyone pain, but I hope it will be of short duration.
And this is all the reply which I have the honor of receiving? I wonder why. With so little an endeavor at civility, I am rejected.
Civility? With so evident a design of offending and insulting me, you told me that you liked me against your will, your reason, and against your very character. Is that not some excuse for incivility? I have every reason in the world to think ill of you, Mr. Darcy. Do you think any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who has been the means of ruining the happiness of my sister Jane? Or would you dare deny the part you acted in dividing her from Bingley?
I have no wish of denying it. I did everything within my power to detach my friend from your sister. Towards him, I have been kinder than towards myself.
But it is not merely on that affair on you, in which my dislike of you is founded. My opinion of you was decided months ago, upon the account I received on your behavior towards poor Mr. Wickham.
Oh, poor Wickham!
Yes, and in what imaginary act of friendship can you defend yourself there?
You take an eager interest in this gentleman's affairs.
Who that knows of his misfortunes can help feeling an interest?
His misfortunes? Yes, his misfortunes have been great indeed.
And of your infliction. You have reduced him to his current state of poverty, withheld advantages, deprived him of the life your very father wished for him.
And this is your opinion of me? My faults by these calculations are great indeed. But perhaps these offenses might have been overlooked had not your pride been hurt.
My pride?
Yes, pride, wounded by the honest confession of the objections which long prevented me from revealing my true feelings. Should I have concealed my struggles, flattered you, but disguise of every sort as my abhorrence? Did you wish for me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connections?
You are mistaken, Mr. Darcy. The mode of your declaration simply spared me the concern I might have thought of refusing you, had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner.
More gentlemanlike?
You could not have offered your hand in any way that would have tempted me to accept it. I had not known you a month before I felt you were the last man in the world whom I could ever marry.
You have said quite enough, Miss Bennet. I perfectly understand your feelings, and now have only to be ashamed of my own. Please accept my best wishes for your health and happiness, and forgive me for taking up so much of your time.
sure you've recovered, Elizabeth. You had barely any rest last night, and you scarce uttered 2 words this morning.
Forgive me, Charlotte. I fear I'm a dreadful guest.
Nonsense, Lizzie. I only worry a persistent headache, but your father would never forgive me if I had taken too long when I'm well today.
Indeed he would not, but I promise, I'm quite well.
If you insist, then. Come, we should attend the parsonage before Carlos and Mr. Darcy take their leave. I'm sure you'd not wish to...
Charlotte, would you mind terribly if that is, I do so enjoy the lanes here at Rosings. I think I might like to take the longer way back.
You have no wish to see Mr. Darcy, do you? Oh, Lizzie, I do wish you could find about his visit last night. I confess, I've never known you to shout so. Was he cruel to you?
Oh, no, of course not. Oh, we just had a disagreement.
About? Very well. I shan't press the matter. I return home alone and make your farewells. You need not to impede an encounter.
You are too good a friend, Mrs. Collins. I believe I've disappointed you.
Of course not. How could you disappoint anyone?
If only she knew. Charlotte is not wrong, of course. I have not, in fact, recovered from last night's headache. To think that I should receive an offer of marriage from Mr. Darcy, that he should have been in love with me. Oh, I suppose I should feel some pity for having rejected him with such, what did he say? Incivility? But his pride, such abominable pride, no sympathy for what he'd done to Jane. No denial of his treatment of Wickham. Thank heaven for Charlotte. With a bit of luck, I can take my leave of Hunsford without having to...
Miss Bennet. I have been walking the grounds for some time in hope of finding you. Would you do me the honor of reading this letter?
I should discard this immediately. I should have turned away from the grove before he even saw me. Oh, I assure you, this is due only to the strongest curiosity.
Miss Bennet, be not alarmed at receiving this letter, for you need not fear any renewal of those offers which last night so disgusting to you. But you have charged me with 2 very grave offences. First, that I detached Bingley from your sister, and second, that I've been the sole means of ruining George Wickham. If in this letter I revealed any feelings which are offensive to you, I beg in advance for your forgiveness, for the severity of your charges demands that it must be done, else I would have spared you the unpleasantness entirely. I have not long been in Hertfordshire, when I noticed that Bingley preferred your sister.
I do hope to see you very soon, Miss Bennet. Perhaps next when you walk through Meryton.
I would like that, Mr. Bingley.
But it was not until Netherfield that I became aware of the general expectation in town for the probable engagement.
I must certainly hope to have pleasure, often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event shall take place.
Such a well-suited match, wouldn't you agree? Well, congratulations will then flow in.
After this, I observed your sister's behaviors attentively. Her look and manner were cheerful and engaging, but without any symptom of true affection.
Without any symptom?
Though she took his attentions with pleasure, she did not seem to invite them with peculiar regard.
Bingley liked his sister, undoubtedly, but he may never do more than like her if she's not help him on.
The quietness of her expression, the polite civility of her manner, convinced me that her heart was not as violently engaged as my friend's.
She must leave him no doubt of her affection. Mr. Bingley may lose interest if she is not disregarding her temper.
If I have been in error, then I beg in advance for your forgiveness. But there were other matters to consider. Your mother's relations in Cheapside, though objectionable, were nothing to the total lack of modesty and blatant desire for wealth so often portrayed by herself.
Oh, it is quite confirmed. Mr. Bingley has 5,000 a year.
Your younger sister.
Colonel Forster will have you whipped, Denny, for his place of your sword. Liddy, please.
And pardon me, Your father.
Yes, better come away, my dear. I believe you have delighted us long enough.
All of this induced me to prevent Bingley from what I truly thought would be a most unhappy marriage. As for Mr. Wickham, I fear I must lay before you the whole story. Wickham was indeed my father's godson, and my boyhood companion. His manner with my father were easy and engaging. But from my father, he was careful to guard true.
Excuse me.
I am sure that you have been informed that Wickham was promised a parish living. I am equally sure of what you have not been informed.
Darcy, I am not so insensitive to the old man's wishes, but I have no desire of having the run of a church. You know I'm not suited to be a clergyman.
Certainly not.
However, in lieu of taking orders, there is the matter of compensation. If I am not to accept the living, should I not be given a sum of equal value?
Your price.
What say you to £3,000?
3,000? This cannot be.
I granted Wickham's request on grounds that he resigned all claim to the church. But scarcely 2 years later,
I have come to the realization, Darcy, that I was wrong to refuse such a noble calling. I do hope you'll be so kind as to write to the Archbishop and recommend me.
How much is your debt?
Let's just say circumstances are bad.
I had no difficulty in believing it, but you can hardly blame me for refusing it, or my resisting his next 5 attempts.
5?
I have no doubt that he abused my character in your society, as he now does in my own.
I've been a disappointed man, Miss Bennet. A military life is not what I was intended for. Mr. Darcy has done me a terrible disservice.
After this, our connection seemed entirely dissolved. But last summer, he was most painfully reintroduced to my family's acquaintance. My sister Georgiana, who was 10 years my junior, was attending school at Ramsgate. Unbeknownst to myself, Wickham followed her there.
Why, sweet Georgiana Darcy, you've blossomed overnight.
Mr. Wickham.
She was then but 15, and believed herself in love, and consented to an elopement.
You know my brother and cousin did warn me to be on my guard for fortune hunters in Ramsgate, George.
Why, Miss Darcy, you know me too well to suspicion me of that. We grew up together, you and I. Born in poverty and raised in privilege, you know how much I desire to make friends based on the merits of their own character, rather than those of their relations.
A day or two before the event, I joined them, unexpectedly.
Brother.
Unable to grieve her, or offend her me, Georgiana revealed the truth of the affair. You can imagine how I felt, and how I reacted. Wickham's chief motive was my sister's fortune, a sum of £30,000. But I have no doubt that he also sought revenge. Had this elopement taken place, had he succeeded in disgracing my sister, his revenge would have been complete. This is the truth of every affair concerning George Wickham. I know not what lies he has told you, but detection could not have been in your power. You are too kind a person to suspicion those you would call friend. I hope you will believe me, but if your hate for me prevents it, I invite you to see Colonel Fitzwilliam for confirmation, for he knows every particular. I will only add, God bless you.
I am an absolute fool.
How despicably have they acted? How blind, partial, prejudiced. Was I so taken with Wickham that I could have missed how very eagerly he related his his misfortune? Was I so repulsed by Mrs. Darcy's pride I could not detect the falsehood in Wickham's slander? Am I so used to the follies of my own family that I could have forgotten how ridiculous we all must appear? I have courted with ignorance, and driven away reason. Until this moment, I never knew myself.
Lizzie! Jane, I thought our Uncle Gardner was to send his manservant with the carriage.
I couldn't wait any longer, my dear sister. The only person at Longbourn who feels your absence more keenly than I is our poor papa. Lizzie, you look frightfully pale. Was it a trying visit to Hansford?
The carriage ride home with Jane was both a relief and a burden. I eagerly acquainted her with the truth of Wickham, but I would not burden her with what I had learned of Bingley.
I don't know when I have been more shocked. Wickham, so bad as this? It is past belief. And poor Mr. Darcy, how he must have suffered over Wickham's behaviour toward his sister.
I am heartily sorry for him. Do you blame me for refusing his proposal?
Blame you? Oh, no.
But you should blame me for have spoken so highly of Wickham.
No. Lizzie, you could not have known the truth of it. Everything about Wickham's appearance and conduct gave us leave to think well of him.
That is very true. It seems between the two men, one has all the goodness, and the other, all the appearance of it.
In this new light, I suppose it is good the militia have gone to Brighton. Is it not?
Indeed. At least all the women of Hertfordshire are safe beyond Wickham's reach. Jane, do you think we should make his conduct known?
Well, with Wickham gone, surely we have no occasion to expose him further. What do you think?
That we ought not attempt it. Mr. Darcy has not authorized me to reveal it publicly, and he has entrusted me with the care of his younger sister's reputation. I would not wish to betray him.
Well, well, I am glad you are come back, Lizzie.
It is good to be home, Papa.
I'm sure Jane has acquainted you with how often in your absence I have been readily assured of my failings as a husband and a father.
Sir?
Oh, Lizzie, is it not Mr. Bennet dreadfully cruel in expecting to take us all to Brighton?
No, indeed, Mamma.
Lizzie!
Kitty and Lydia have already mourned the loss of one regiment. Think what heartbreak a whole camp full of soldiers might bring.
Bravo! The return of good sense to Longbourn. I can hardly stomach the notion of spending an entire summer in Brighton with two, or may I say three, of the silliest girls in England.
Oh, with such delight you vex me, Mr. Bennet. Is it fair, Jane, do not wish for a holiday after being so cruelly cast aside by Mr. Bingley?
Mamma.
An undeserving young man who left Netherfield after using my daughter extremely ill.
Mamma, I am quite reconciled.
And what of your favourite girl, Lizzie? You refuse dear Collins.
Dear Collins. There you see, Lizzie. Mr. Collins is now quite adored.
Surely Lizzie could find something for Brighton to account for visiting the Collinses. How is Charlotte? No doubt talking constantly about becoming mistress of my house after your father is dead.
There, Mrs. Bennet. Let us not give way to such gloomy thoughts. Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may live longer than you.
Mama, Papa, Jane,
Lydia.
Papa, oh, hello, Lizzie. Welcome home.
Lydia, what?
Mama, you will never guess what has happened.
Heavens, girl, what is it?
Harriet Forster, the wife of Colonel of the regiment, has invited me to be her personal guest at Brighton.
Oh, Lydia, my dear, how exciting!
Invited you to Brighton, you say? On your own?
Oh, Jane, Lizzie, is this not wonderful?
Mamma, I do not
Oh,
think
Lydia, you must take every opportunity of enjoying yourself.
I cannot see why Mrs. Forster should not ask me as well as Lydia, Mama.
Oh, Kitty!
Though I'm not Harriet's particular friend, I have just as much right to be asked as she has. Why, I am 2 years older!
Well, I don't see what cause she has to be so very jealous. 'Tis not if I applied to Harriet for the invitation.
Jealousy is both reasonable and belongs to reasonable men, while envy is base and belongs to the base. One makes himself get good things by jealousy, while the other is not allowed a neighbor to have them through envy.
Oh, Jane, to see the streets of Brighton crowded with schools of officers in red coats.
Lydia.
Can you not see me sitting beneath a tent, Mamma, surrounded by 6 or 7 officers at once?
Lydia, do take hold of yourself. You know Papa cannot spare the horses from the field for so long a journey as Brighton. You'll have no transport.
Oh, Papa, please, we will ride all night through the rain if we must.
Lydia, for goodness sake.
I'm afraid Lizzie is right, my dear. Our horses cannot be spared. But perhaps we may apply to your mother's sister, Gardner, when she comes in August. Surely she and your uncle can take you to Brighton upon their return.
Papa, oh, Papa, Aunt Gardner, what a clever idea.
Oh, Lydia, is your father not the most excellent in the world?
Most excellent. My, well, that Harriet Foster has written that much sooner. There you see, Lizzie. You have come home, Lydia goes to Brighton, and I am restored to former glory. We shall have nothing but peace and good sense come August.
Papa, you cannot be serious in granting Lydia your approval.
Why ever not?
Papa, consider how young Mrs. Forster is. She is scarce a year older than Lydia, and every bit as silly. Surely she is not a suitable chaperone.
Oh, come now. Colonel Forster is a very sensible man. He can keep her out of any real trouble. And we are too poor for her to be the object of prey of such officers as require a chaperone.
But
mark me, my dears, we shall have no peace at Longbourn if Lydia does not go to Brighton.
thrice more in the span of 2 weeks have Jane and I argued against Lydia's going. But Papa's will is resolute, and his argument does have merit. Lydia is too poor to be of any true interest to Wickham, and I suppose there is no stopping her now. Mamma is in high spirits again, and my aunt and uncle are arriving today to collect Lydia.
Hello, Lizzie.
Dear aunt, how fares Cheapside?
Very well, my dear, very well. Though your uncle's business has called him back to London for the rest of the summer, we so dearly wish to visit the Northern Lakes after a detour through Brighton.
Uncle Gardner did not accompany you?
It is just as well. I fear the bulk of Lydia's trunks will soon overtake the carriage.
Indeed.
Lizzie, what say you to accompany your dear old aunt to the north? I confess, I rather thought of giving up the holiday entirely after your uncle was summoned home, but it would please me greatly to show you the lay of Lambton.
Lambton, aunt?
A little town on the outskirts of Derbyshire, where I spent some of my youth. I so dearly wish to see it again. Before me and your uncle, I had a run of a lovely shop in a village you know.
Will you continue your tour of the lakes then?
Why, of course, if you wish it. We could apply to see the great estates of Oxford, Warwick, and Birmingham. In fact, there is one estate not 2 miles from Newton, if it were merely a fine house, richly furnished, I should not care about it myself. But the grounds are delightful, and they have some of the finest woods in the country. What say you, Lizzie? Will you come?
I could never refuse you, aunt.
Wonderful. I shall speak to your mother and father directly.
Aunt Gardner.
Yes, dear?
What is the name of this grand estate we simply must visit?
Oh, did I not say? Well, now that you mention it, I do believe you may know the owner. Your mother wrote me last summer about a gentleman staying at Netherfield.
Netherfield? Oh, you mean Mr. Bingley? You taking me to see Mr. Bingley's estate in town?
Bingley? Oh, heavens no. We're going to Pemberley, my dear. Mr. Darcy's home.
Pemberley? My aunt wishes to take me to Pemberley, the estate of Mr. Darcy, the man I cruelly rejected, and then blamed for ruining the life of the scoundrel who tried to defile his sister? How horrifying.
I had scarce but a few weeks of travelling through Derbyshire before the dreaded appointment. When we arrived at the inn in Lambton, I applied to the housekeeper of Pemberley directly and inquired as to whether or not the family was at home. Mercifully, she replied,
"The family are away in London, madam. Their guests are Mr. Bingley and his sister. We expect them all arrived here tomorrow, along with master's sister, Miss Georgiana."
There. You see, Lizzie, you need not worry about imposing on your friend.
Oh, does this young lady know Mr. Darcy?
A little.
And you not think him a very handsome gentleman, ma'am?
A very handsome.
Ay, I'm sure I know none so handsome or so good as my master, for I've known him since you were 4 years old. This here is his picture, and very much like him, but in the gallery upstairs you'll see a finer, larger picture.
Is your master much at Pemberley in the course of the year?
Not so much as I could wish, ma'am. If you might marry, you might see more of him, but I do not know when that will be.
Oh, Mr. Darcy.
Miss Bennet.
Your housekeeper, Mrs.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Mrs. Reynolds. Yes, she informed us that you would certainly not be here till tomorrow.
Oh, well, yes. A business with my steward required that I return early.
I'm terribly sorry to be intruding on your privacy. We shall go away directly.
No, you must stay. You're most welcome here, Miss Bennet. How long has been your stay in Derbyshire?
About half a month, sir.
And your family, are they all...
They're all well, yes, I thank you.
Oh, good. Good. Miss
Mr.
Bennet,
Darcy,
you
I
must
will
allow me
not
to... That is, when I wrote that letter...
Please, you have no need of explaining.
But you must know that when I wrote it, I believed myself in a dreadful bitterness of spirit.
The letter perhaps began in bitterness, Mr. Darcy, but did not end so.
I know what I wrote must give you pain.
But it was necessary. Truly, sir, do not distress yourself.
You have destroyed it.
It shall be burnt, if you wish it.
Did what I write, perhaps, make you think less ill of me?
Mr. Darcy,
Oh, good morning, Mr. Darcy. We're not expecting you till tomorrow.
Apologies, Mrs. Reynolds. I had not the time of informing you.
I'll run for tea. Miss Gardner? Miss Bennet?
Miss Bennet, would you do me the honor of introducing me to your friend?
Of course. May I present Mrs. Bennet's sister, Mrs. Gardner?
A pleasure, madame. Have you had a pleasant stay in Derbyshire?
I have, sir, though I fear I've imposed a bit longer on my niece than intended. She has been my touring companion these past few weeks, as my husband was obliged to stay in town.
Then may I inquire after Mr. Gardner, ma'am?
You may, sir. He does very well, though he is bound to his clients in Cheapside.
Cheapside? A very charming village. I happened upon Grace Church Street not 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that is very near where we live. You must allow us to extend you an invitation.
And then you must allow us to do the same. I will be joined tomorrow by my sister Georgiana, and on her behalf would like to invite you to join us and the Bingleys at Pemberley for dinner. Tomorrow, perhaps, or some other night during your stay in Derbyshire.
Oh, you're very kind, Mr. Darcy. Thank you. Lizzie, what say you to that?
We would be delighted, sir. Can this be Mr. Darcy? That he should speak to me at all is amazing after my behavior at Hunsford. But to behave in a manner so kind, so cordial, as to wish us to form an acquaintance with his sister? Why is he so altered? From what can it proceed? For it cannot be for my sake that his manners are so softened. Indeed, after accusing him so abominably about Wickham, I declare it to be impossible that he should still care for me.
Miss Bennet, how supremely agreeable to have arrived and found you a guest at Pemberley as well. Why, Caroline and I were just speaking the other day of how dearly we missed our Hertfordshire friends.
Dearly. You are very kind, Mr. Bingley. I do not believe you have met Mrs. Bennet's sister, Mrs. Gardner, Mr. and Miss Bingley.
Mrs. Gardner, it is a great pleasure, madame. I remember how very highly of you Miss Jane Bennet often spoke.
Thank you, sir. I must return the compliment, for not a single letter arrived from my sister all season that did not but mention your kindness and attentions to my niece while she was ill.
It was an honor to be of service, ma'am. Pray, might I inquire,
That is to say, does she, or rather do all your nieces still reside at Longbourn?
Do you perhaps mean to ask if they're all still unmarried, sir? Come, let us share a cup of tea, and I'll give you all the news of Meryton.
Miss Bennet, please allow me to introduce someone who so particularly wishes to meet you. My sister, Miss Darcy.
Georgiana.
It is lovely to meet you, Miss Darcy. Your brother thinks very highly of you.
He is too kind, Miss Bennet. Surely.
I cannot believe it. Mrs. Reynolds showed us a very pretty room yesterday. Recently redecorated, I understand?
My new sitting room.
Very elegant.
Thank you, Miss Bennet. It was a gift from my brother. I spent a great deal of time with the paints after. That is, after I finished school. Last summer.
And who could do otherwise amidst such cozy surroundings? You have impeccable taste, Miss Darcy.
Indeed, dear Georgiana, how could anyone think otherwise? You are very kind, Miss Eliza, to pay such compliments to my dear friend. It is always good to enjoy a bit of female companionship. Why, Darcy was telling me just the other day how glad he was to know I would be at Pemberley to dote on his dear sister.
Of course he was.
Pray, Miss Eliza, are the militia not recently removed from Meryton?
Yes, they have spent the majority of the summer in Brighton.
That must be a great loss to your family. Whatever are Miss Kitty and Miss Lydia finding to do with themselves?
Well, actually, Miss Lydia...
The Bennet girls are not quite so genteel as you or I. Indeed, you would find them a good deal more adventurous. I quite envy their vivacity.
Thank you, Miss Bingley.
You or I have hardly the spirit necessary to spend our summers chasing after young officers and declaring ourselves to be in love with every new handsome face in town. Why, Georgiana, are you quite all right?
I fear the August heat has overwhelmed me as well, Miss Darcy. Shall we have some refreshment? Will you tell me more about your painting? I'm told you're quite accomplished.
How very ill Miss Eliza Bennet looks. I never in my life saw anyone so much altered as she is since the winter. I fear I should not have recognized her again.
I have noticed no other alteration than her being rather tan. No miraculous consequence of traveling in summer.
For my own part, I must confess, I never could see any beauty in her. Her face is too thin, her complexion has no brilliancy, and while her teeth are tolerable, her features are not at all handsome.
Miss Bingley.
Well, I remember when we first knew in Hertfordshire, how amazed we all were to find that she was a reputed beauty. I particularly recollect your saying the night of the Meryton Assembly that she was not even tolerable enough to dance with.
Yes, that was when I first met her. But I've come to consider her as one of the most handsome women of my acquaintance.
Oh!
Excuse me, sir, but the post just came by the Lamp Express.
Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds.
Only it's very odd, sir, but I believe it's for Miss Bennet. It was direct here straight from the Lambton Inn.
Indeed. Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds.
Oh, Mr. Darcy, I'm terribly sorry. I cannot imagine.
Do not worry. It was sent express, so it must be important.
If you desire privacy, you may read in the library.
Thank you, Miss Darcy. I suppose I have been anxious for a letter from Jane. Though I must confess, I dread leaving poor Georgiana to Miss Bingley's charms. I can think with nothing but wonder at Mr. Darcy's newfound civility. To be sure, the general society of Hertfordshire would hardly recognize him.
By the time, my dear sister, you have received my hurried letter, I pray it is at least coherent. I had hoped not to intrude on your holiday, but something of a most unexpected and serious nature has occurred. At 12 on Friday, we received an express from Colonel Forster, informing us that Lydia, poor Lydia, is gone from Brighton.
Gone?
She's run off with one of the officers.
No. Oh, no, this cannot be.
To own the truth, Lizzie, with Wickham.
Oh, no!
I'm so sorry. So imprudent a match. I was willing to hope that somehow we had misunderstood. Wickham's character.
Sweet Jane, do not deceive yourself.
If it were only an ill-conceived elopement we should fear, it does appear that Lydia supposed they would marry.
Lizzie, is everything all right?
But Papa has since gone to London and learned from Captain Denny that Wickham never intended to marry Lydia at all.
Miss Bennet.
I beg your pardon, but we must leave you. On business that cannot be delayed.
Lizzie?
Good God, what is the matter?
Enclosed with my own, I have included a letter Colonel Forster discovered, addressed to his wife, from Lydia.
My dear Harriet, you will laugh when you know where I'm gone, and I cannot help but laugh myself at your surprise tomorrow when I'm missed. I'm going to London, and if you cannot guess with whom I shall think you a simpleton, you need not send the word along of my going, for it will make the surprise all the greater when I write them and sign my name Lydia Wickham. What a good joke it will be. I can hardly write for laughing.
I had hoped to spare the thoughtlessness of our sister Lizzie, to have written such a letter in such a moment. In London, Papa remains with Colonel Forster, trying to discover them. But surely his distress will not allow him to pursue the measure long. Will you ask Aunt Gardner to write Uncle in Cheapside and ask for his advice and assistance? And I cannot help but beg you all to come home as soon as possible.
We must return to Longbourn, Aunt, immediately.
I am grieved, shocked.
Well, I think that I might have prevented this. I, who knew what he was, if I had but explained some part of Wickham's true character to my family, this could not have happened.
Upon my word, I cannot think so ill of this Mr. Wickham. It seems so unlikely that any young officer should form a design against a girl who is by no means unprotected or friendless and actually staying in the colonel's family.
It is a fanciful hope, Aunt. She is lost forever. She has no great fortune he can be seeking. But then why should that matter to a scoundrel? You know him too well, Mr. Darcy, to doubt it.
I am aware that you have long been seeking privacy in this matter. Would to heaven anything be said that could offer consolation, but I will not torment you with vain wishes.
You are very kind, sir.
I will send for Mrs. Reynolds at once, for you'll be wanting your carriage as soon as possible. I am most sorry for your distress, Miss Bennet. I do hope for this conclusion a happier ending.
What a shame Lydia's disgrace must place our whole family in his eyes, in the eyes of everyone, and I cannot blame him. Who could ever want for our society after a scandal such as this? But it is most ill-timed, really. Never have I felt I could honestly love him as now. Her love must be entirely in vain.
pale, Jane. How much you must have gone through.
And do not distress yourself over me, Lizzie.
I'm only sorry we could not get here sooner. Has anything been heard?
Only that Papa has since gone to Uncle in Cheapside, and he's staying in an inn near Gracechurch Street.
And what of the fugitives?
Nothing. But Papa wrote this morning that he has some news. Uncle is using his influence in Cheapside to discover them.
Of what sort of news? Good or bad?
Oh, Lizzie, what good can be expected? The Colonel wrote that Wickham was in a wretched state of finances. There's even talk of gaming debts. The Colonel believes that more than £10,000 would be necessary to clear his debts in Brighton alone.
10,000? Oh, Jane.
Think what this will mean for poor Lydia.
And happy as the event must be for Lydia, we may draw from it this useful lesson, that loss of virtue in a female is irretrievable, and that her reputation is no less brittle than it is beautiful, and she cannot be too much guarded in her behavior towards undeserving of the other sex.
It has been almost a week now since anything new has been heard, with almost no hope of recovering Lydia and salvaging our family's reputation. And with Mamma still in hysterics, and Papa still in town, I believe nothing short of a miracle will...
Mama, look! Father arrives home.
Oh!
And he brings Lydia. Oh, to think only 2 months since I went away. Good gracious, I am sure I had no idea how fun it all was.
Oh, my dear Lydia!
Oh, Mama, do the people hereabouts know I am married? I was afraid they might not. So I let down the glass in the carriage and took off my gloves so that all might see as we drove by Longbourn.
Oh, Mr. Bennet, is this not wonderful? A daughter married and the youngest one of them all. Oh, and Mr. Wickham, how handsome you look in your red coat. Do you not agree, Lizzie?
Is he not charming, Mamma? I am sure all my sisters must envy me. They must all go to Brighton. That is the place to get husbands. Why, I dare say I shall get husbands for all of them before the autumn is over.
Thank you for my share of the favor, but I don't particularly like your way of getting husbands.
Yes, well, shall we all retire to the parlor for tea?
Ah, Jane, I take your place now. You must go lower, because I'm a married woman.
What a carriage ride that must have been. Oh, dear Father, what sorrows you must have endured.
Say nothing of that, dear Lizzie. Who should suffer but myself?
You must not be so severe upon yourself.
No, Lizzie, let me feel how much I have been to blame. I am not afraid of being overpowered by my guilt. It will pass soon enough. And I promise I bear you no resentment for the advice you gave in July, which, considering the event, shows some greatness of the mind, my dear.
Papa.
Anyway, the thing is done, and the terms are so astonishingly convenient upon myself.
The terms, sir?
Yes. All that is required of me is to ensure Lydia's equal share of her inheritance.
Impossible.
Yes, Lizzie, those are my sentiments exactly.
But his gaming, all of Wickham's debts. How could Wickham have married Lydia in town without paying off all his creditors?
And now we come to the point. There are two things I would like very much to know. One is how much money your Uncle Gardiner must have laid down to bring this farcical elopement about. And the other, how am I ever going to repay him?
Miss Bennet.
Mr. Wickham?
I'm afraid I interrupt your solitude.
You do. But the interruption need not be unwelcome.
I should be sorry if it were. I do hope we are still friends.
We are not, Mr. Wickham. We are brother and sister now.
Indeed, sister. I understand from Mr. Gardiner that you and your aunt were recently in Derbyshire.
I was.
I envy you the pleasure. I fear my new regiment will prevent me from getting any closer to Derbyshire in the coming months than Newcastle.
How unfortunate.
Did you happen to pass through the village of Kimpton during your travels?
We might have, but our trip was curtailed, Mr. Wickham.
I only mention it because it's the living which I ought to have had. A most delightful place, Kimpton. Excellent parsonage. A very warm parish.
And how should you have liked making sermons, Mr. Wickham?
Oh, exceedingly well. It would have been just the thing for me.
Really? Because I have heard from authority that there was a time when sermon making was not so palatable to you as it seems at present. That you actually declared your resolution against taking orders and were reimbursed accordingly.
Yes. Well.
George, go sit to Mamma in the parlour. She has a need for your talent at the card table. Lizzie, why have you not joined us? Why, you've missed my account of our wedding. Are you not curious about the affair?
Not at all.
You are so strange that I must tell you how it went off. We were married, you know, at St. Clement's, and it was all settled that we should be there by 11 o'clock. Uncle and I were to go, and others were to meet us by the church.
This explanation went on for above 12 minutes.
When he was late, I was afraid that the groomsmen might never show, but luckily I remembered that even if he'd been prevented, the wedding need not be delayed. We had an able substitute in Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy?
Yes.
Mr. Darcy, at your wedding?
Why, of course. It was Mr. Darcy who discovered us in London. He brought Wickham to the church. Well, someone had to pay for the vicar and the flowers, Lizzie. Not to mention all of Wickham's debts in London that needed settling, and all of his creditors in Brighton for Oh, gracious me. I quite forgot.
What?
I ought not to have said a word. Oh, it was to be such a secret. I promised Mr. Darcy so faithfully, and he was adamant that no one must know. Oh, what will Wickham say?
Though I hate to say it to my own sister, I am happy that Mr. Wickham and Lydia are off to Newcastle now. 'Tis a relief to have the house back to normal again.
Indeed.
Would you like to walk to Meryton with Kitty and me?
Jane! Jane! The case child, he's come!
Who, Mamma?
Mr. Bingley, of course! He's come back to Netherfield. He's coming up a lane this very moment.
Mrs. Bennet.
Mr. Bingley, it has been a long time since you went away.
Mrs. Bennet, I hope I might have a word of private conversation with your daughter.
How fares your sister, Mr. Bingley?
Jane, I have been a fool.
I do hope that your sister has enjoyed her stay in London.
Jane, I beg your forgiveness. My absence from Netherfield, you have endured pain. I wish I could drive an arrow through my heart for having been its cause. Except that I now have the slightest hope of relieving it. When I left, I accepted some extraordinarily bad advice from a friend. I allowed myself to be convinced that you could not care for me, could not love me as I loved you. But now, my friend assures me I was in the wrong, and I am my own master now. Dearest Jane, I cannot rest until I know for certain. Will you marry me?
Yes, Mr. Bingley. Oh, Mr. Bingley! Oh, Jane, you'll be a very happy woman.
'Tis too much happiness, Mamma. Far too much. Why is not everybody as happy as I am?
Oh, I'm sure I shan't get a wink of sleep. I was sure you could not be so beautiful for nothing.
You are a good gal, Jane. and I will have great pleasure in thinking you will be so happily settled. Your tempers are so alike. You are each so combined that nothing will ever be resolved on. So easy that every servant will cheat you, and so generous you will always exceed your income.
Exceed their income? Why, Mr. Bennet, he has 5,000 a year! Miss Elizabeth Bennet. This lady, I suppose, is your mother?
Yes, ma'am, she is. Mamma, may I present Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
And that, I suppose, is one of your sisters?
Yes, ma'am. You have a very small room here. It is nothing compared to Rosings, your ladyship. But
Miss Bennet, there seemed to be a prettyish bit of wilderness on one side of your lawn. I should be glad to take a turn in it, if you would favor me with your company. You can be at no loss to understand the reason of my journey hither.
Indeed, you are mistaken, madam. I cannot account for the honor.
Miss Bennet, a report of the most alarming nature reached me 2 days ago. I was told that not only was your younger sister on the point of being most advantageously married, but that you, that Miss Elizabeth Bennet, would soon, in all likelihood, be married to my own nephew, Mr. Darcy. Though I know this to be impossible, I instantly resolved on setting out for this place to make my sentiments plain.
If you believed it impossible, I wonder that you took the trouble of coming so far. What could your ladyship propose by it?
At once to insist upon having such a report universally contradicted.
Your coming here is rather a confirmation, is it not, if such a report exists?
Do you pretend to be ignorant of it?
I have never heard of it.
And you can likewise declare there's no foundation for it?
I cannot pretend to possess equal frankness with your ladyship. You may ask questions which I shall choose not to answer.
This is not to be borne. Miss Bennet, I insist on being satisfied. Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage?
Your ladyship has declared it to be impossible.
It ought to be so, but your arts and allurements may have, in a moment of base infatuation, made him forget himself. You may have drawn him in.
If I have, I shall be the last person to confess it.
Miss Bennet, do you know who I am? I am almost the nearest relation Darcy has in this world, and I am entitled to know all his dearest concerns.
But you are not entitled to know mine. Nor will behavior such as this ever induce me to be explicit.
Obstinate, headstrong girl, I am ashamed of you. Is Mr. Darcy's future to be threatened by marriage to a younger woman of inferior birth? If you were sensible of your own good, you would not wish to quit the sphere in which you have been brought up.
Lady Catherine, in marrying your nephew, I should not consider myself as quitting that sphere. He is a gentleman. I am a gentleman's daughter. So far we are equal. If I am Mr. Darcy's choice, why should I not accept him?
True, but who was your mother? Who was your uncles and aunts? Do you imagine me ignorant of their station?
Whatever my connections may be, if Mr. Darcy does not object to them, they can be nothing to you.
Tell me once and for all, are you engaged to him?
I'm not.
And will you promise me never to enter into such an engagement?
I will make no promise of the kind.
Miss Bennet, I will not.
Lady Catherine, when I was your guest at Rosings Park, your nephew did call upon me at Hunsford Parsonage, and he did offer his hand.
Then it is as I suspected. You have...
I refused him.
You refused him? A Hertfordshire girl refused the chance to be mistress of Pemberley? Impossible!
I care not for Pemberley, or Derbyshire, or all the riches I know he could offer. I cared only for my own happiness, and I was convinced, your ladyship, he could not make me happy. Nephew slighted me at an assembly once, and I'm afraid I never about him. I allowed myself to be entirely misled in my understanding of his character. And when every day there was evidence of his growing regard and affection for me, I chose only to see arrogance and conceit. I treated him with mockery and contempt, gave him no encouragement, and he was so love. It is many months since that I have come to realize how very wrong I had been, to bear witness to his goodness and kindness, his unfathomable generosity, his loyalty and devotion to his friends, his sister. I do not believe I have known a better man. And I'm quite certain I could never love any other, so I cannot promise what you ask, your ladyship. I can only promise that if I were so fortunate as to still be loved by Mr. Darcy, there isn't a soul in the world who could ever induce me to refuse him now. Least of all you.
And this is your final resolve? You would marry him for love?
I would.
Very well. Darcy will know how to act. I like her nephew. Do try to get it right this time.
Mr. Darcy.
Miss Bennet.
Mr. Darcy, I'm a very selfish creature. Please allow me to thank you for the unexampled kindness you have shown to my poor sister. And please allow me to express gratitude for my whole family, since they do not know to whom they're indebted. You must not be cross with Lydia for telling me. I am glad that she did, and then what you most certainly did for Bingley and Jane just now. Indeed, my whole family is so very much in your debt that...
Miss Bennet, if you must thank me, let it be for yourself alone. Your family owes me nothing.
Mr. Darcy.
Will you ever forgive me?
Forgive you?
My actions at Hunsford were deplorable. I cannot think upon them without abhorrence.
Oh, no. We must both share the blame of that evening.
But what did you say that I did not deserve? Had I behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner? You know not how those words have tortured me.
Oh, do not repeat what I said then. Indeed, think only on the past as its remembrances give you pleasure.
I should perhaps speak to your father.
He's in the parlor.
Lizzie, where's Lady Catherine gone? And what does that odious man want here?
Mamma.
And why has he gone into the house?
He goes to speak with father, Mamma.
Speak with father? What can that odious, deviant young man want with Mr. Bennet? I cannot have him disturbing our company. Mr. Darcy coming here.
He goes to ask permission to marry
Mr. Bingley is a friend yet, but I dare say I hate the sight of him.
Mamma, I am to marry Mr. Darcy. Really, Mamma?
Are you out of your senses in accepting this man, Lizzie?
Papa.
Have you not always hated him?
No, Papa, truly,
Very well. I will give him my consent. He is not the kind of person to whom I should dare refuse anything. But let me advise you to think better of it. I know you could not be happy unless you truly esteemed your husband. He's rich, to be sure, but let me not have the grief of seeing you unable to respect your partner in life. Can you really love him?
I can, Papa. I do. I cannot fix the hour, or the spot, or the look, or the words which laid the foundation for it. I was in the middle before I knew it had begun.
Well, my dear, if this be the case, he deserves you. I could not have parted with you, my Lizzie, to anyone less worthy. I say, if any young men come for Mary or Kitty, please send them in. I'm quite at my leisure.